Welcome everybody. My name's Denis and I'm here to share some of the things that I've learned about meditation and some of the key philosophies that are taught within Buddhism. So I see a lot of familiar faces from last week, so I thought I might have scared everybody away because of what I was saying, but that's great. I'm glad you've come back to hear more. So let's start tonight by doing some meditation. So we've already covered breathing meditation, where we're focusing on the breath, which is such a great object to place your attention to do meditation, because you can do it anywhere. You can do it on the train. Don't do it while you're driving, but you can do it on the train, you can do it at home. Any quiet place you can do breathing meditation. And then you can combine that with breathing in white, pure light, thinking it's coming from a pure source, from the light emanating from the Buddha or whatever you feel is a source of truth and purity, and breathe that in and completely fill your whole body with that white light, and then breathe that out. All the negativities go out, all the anxieties go out. So they're the two meditations that we did last week. But I just thought, because this night is about introduction to meditation, I just wanted to teach another meditation which you might choose to do, or you might prefer to do the breathing meditations. Well, this is a breathing meditation I'm about to describe, but you might choose to do the 21 round breath or the white light and the breathing out the black light. Up to you. But this is a third one. And I've had this explained to me a couple of times, this particular meditation, but in particular, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I watched a YouTube recently of His Holiness teaching this actual meditation. And I just thought it's very simple and it's something that would be good to share. And His Holiness mentioned that this meditation is like a tranquilizer. If you're feeling very agitated, this breathing meditation is like a tranquilizer to help settle your mind. So that's a good thing. So this is called the 9-round breathing meditation. And so let's first of all just go over the 7-fold meditation posture that we should try to adopt, because this makes it most conducive for settling your mind, about bringing your mind inward. Because no matter what's happening on in our life at the moment, let's just try and free ourselves for the next hour. Let's give ourselves some space, that this is time to just bring our minds inward and focus inwardly. So the meditation posture. So as I said last week, most important of all, I think, is having a straight back. And sitting on a chair or on the floor on a cushion, have a straight back. And the reason behind that is that the energy channel that we don't see, that we're told about, that flows from the top of the crown down to the spine, runs parallel with the vertebrae, with the spine. Energy flows through this channel. And if you're slumped over, it doesn't flow as well. If it's straight, it really increases the flow of energy through your body. So having a straight back, slightly raised at the back as well. And then if you have your shoulders just a little bit apart from the body, just to let airflow happen. And then your right hand resting on your left hand, thumbs touching together and pointing towards your navel. So there is symbolism here. This hand represents method or love, compassion. This hand represents wisdom. So you need the combination of the two combined to be able to practice. They're both equally important. So we've got that as the third one. Then the fourth one, the head just tilted slightly forward and the tongue resting against the top of the palate. Teeth not clenched, just resting naturally. And your eyes focusing on the tip of the nose. So we're not going to do this meditation right now. I'm just reminding you what is the meditation posture, because this 9-round breathing is a little bit different. And it seems a little bit awkward, but, you know, when the Dalai Lama demonstrated this, he asked everybody to copy him. So I'll suggest the same thing as well. So I do this every morning. I was told by one Lama in Adelaide, this is exceptionally good for your health, and if you do it every morning before breakfast, you might notice the benefit. So I try to discipline myself to do this. For the last 6 months I've been doing this. And this is exactly what the Dalai Lama described. So with your hands out like that, you put your thumb there on your ring finger, left and right hand, then clench your fist, and then you put your hands here. This seems a bit strange, but just follow it. And then you bring your hands up, out to the front, and they seem to bang the hand together. Then this arm goes under your armpit, and then your finger goes onto your right nostril. You block your nostril, and we're going to only breathe in through our left nostril. So breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. That's the first 3. And this is a little bit like you're breathing out all the desirous and attachment energy. Bring our hands back here again. We go up, out, across to here, and now with this finger on your left nostril, close the left nostril. We're breathing in through our right nostril. So that's the 6 rounds. And those 3 are combined with breathing in the pure light and then breathing out hatred and anger and negativities. So we've got rid of attachment and we're getting rid of hatred. And then with the last one, the hands are sort of open, and as we breathe in, the hands come together, the fingers go in, and as we breathe out, they go out. So we'll just do it 3 times like that, breathing in through both nostrils. So in and out. So that's what's called the 9-round breathing. And you can continue after this if you want. You can do your focusing on the breath, settle the mind even more. But that's called the 9-round breathing. And that helps to settle our mind. Yes? Yes?
Can you show me the mudra from the...
So it's that finger onto the ring finger, and then the fingers close over it. So it's making a fist like that. Now, I'm sorry I can't explain the significance of all of this. You know, it seems very specific, very unusual. But the Dalai Lama mentioned that this goes back to, you know, very, very special teachings where they're combined also with energy channels and chakras, and it's only people that have really been, you know, introduced to these more subtle techniques, meditation techniques, that they further enhance this 9-round breathing. But we're beginners, and this is what was explained as the 9-round breathing. So, okay, so I don't want to get too distracted. So now we're going to do some fixed meditation, because there's fixed meditation or single-pointed meditation and analytical meditation. So now we're going to do some single-pointed meditation. And because this is about Buddhist practices, it's often recommended that you choose the image of the Buddha as your object of meditation. So everybody, just have a look at the Buddha. Try and memorise in your mind, just for a few, not for very long, but have a look. You can see the Buddha's seated in the full lotus posture and his hands are like that. He's golden in colour, wearing robes, got this Ushnishna at the top of the crown, elongated earlobes. These are just some of the marks or the signs of a Buddha. And try and memorise that, like try and keep that in mind. So as if you can visualise that in your head. So, you know, you could have a picture of the Buddha on your table at home if you want to do this meditation more frequently. Look at the Buddha, remember it, look at the Buddha, okay? Because this meditation is about bringing the visualisation internal. It's not about looking externally. So it's an inner mental image that we're going to try and focus our meditation on. So let's do that now. So as described by the Dalai Lama, now we can sit in the meditation posture with our hands together and our thumbs touching. So about this size, we visualise the Buddha in front of us at the level of the brow. And so that's what we're trying to picture. This Buddha is now appearing in our mind this distant apart. We're not looking at it with our eyes, with our visual consciousness. This is with our mental consciousness. So we're visualising that the Buddha is about that far away. And it's important to visualise that there's much radiant light coming from the heart of the Buddha. This helps with us maintaining clarity and not dullness. And then it's also recommended that you visualise that the Buddha is heavy, actually has weight, doesn't sink but has weight, and that helps with maintaining some stability in our mind. So let's just do this for a few minutes. We try and recollect that image of the Buddha and we focus on it. Remembering it's bright and light and heavy, and try and see that as clearly as you can. If your mind's wandering, just bring it back to that image of the Buddha. All right, well, let's just come back from our deep meditation. And I'm sure what you all have found, it's extremely hard to keep our mind focused, let alone to see the object clearly. But just imagining that there's an object in front of us and to try to focus our mind on that, it's extremely difficult. However, it is possible through real effort, through perseverance and consistent practice, to develop such a level of concentration that you can hold the image completely fixed and your mind actually becomes one with the object. This is what it's described as. It becomes one with the object. And with that advanced level of concentration, you can achieve a state called calm abiding or single point of concentration. And that's a great goal of meditation in order to achieve that. But as I think I mentioned last week, it's certainly not the ultimate goal. That's not the goal at all of Buddhist meditation. That empowers you with a powerful tool that you can then use to focus on uprooting, for example, the most innermost, deeply rooted ignorance that we hold within our mind. And we can begin to tackle the causes of our dissatisfaction and unhappiness. I love an example that one of the visiting lamas gave at Tara Institute many years ago, that you can't develop this sort of level of concentration that I'm describing without the practice of pure morality. And without that level of concentration, you can't begin to penetrate or to uproot the depth of our ignorance. Ignorance is a word you hear within Buddhism a lot, because ignorance is actually at the very centre of the cause of all our difficulties in our predicament, caught in samsara. It all basically comes down to our deep-seated ignorance, our misconception on the way in which things exist. We misconceive the way things actually exist, and it's that deep-seated ignorance that is at the very root, and it's only through such penetrative concentration that it's possible to uproot that. So the example that was given about that I find very helpful. So if you picture somebody with strong arms and holding a jackhammer, and they're trying to crack through some concrete. If you're holding the jackhammer and it's just going all over the place, you're not going to actually get anywhere. You need to be able to hold it fixed in one position and then penetrate it. And then eventually you can crack through that concrete. So that analogy is really about the importance of morality, concentration and wisdom, and how the three support each other to then help us develop a great high level of wisdom as an opponent to our deep-seated ignorance. So I thought it's important to mention a couple of things that the Dalai Lama mentioned about this meditation, that the two main obstacles to trying to focus on an object is mental distraction, which I'm sure we can relate to, and the best antidote to that is mindfulness, being able to develop recollection of what the object is, to remember what the object is. So that mindfulness is the best tool to help us with mental distraction. And then the other thing is vigilance. So we need to have a little corner of our mind thinking, am I still focusing on the object? It's like a little spy that's watching Have I lost the object, or am I still focusing on it? And so that's also a very important, inner tool to develop. Another obstacle was, this is more for people that have advanced further with their development of single point of concentration. Let's say that they can now actually hold the object quite well. They're able to focus on it for an hour. Imagine that, amazing. You can actually see the image for an hour. But then there's a real danger that can happen, that your alertness is not there. The object can appear very clearly, but the alertness and the sharpness of it is not there. And with that, even though you might be experiencing a great level of relaxation and calm, it's actually detrimental to you in that it can actually cause your, what did the Dalai Lama say? If you get used to that, the sharpness of your mind is reduced. And he said it's very harmful. So we want to hold the object, but we want to hold it brightly. We want to hold it with energy and enthusiasm. And that, by doing that, then we can avoid what's called as mental sinking, which is a bit like sleeping, but this is a more subtle type of feeling sleepy. And so that was that. Did I say that also when you're visualising that object, it's really important to feel that the light is coming from the heart of the Buddha, radiating out. That's an important part to remember as well. So I tended to talk a bit too much last week, and I wanted to leave more room for discussion. So I'll just say a little bit more if there are any questions or something to discuss. So we've now, we've focused on an image of the Buddha and done some meditation on that. But who was the Buddha? What was the Buddha? What is the Buddha trying to teach us? The world knows that the Buddha is about peace and gentleness and kindness by his demonstration. So what is the Buddha teaching us? And so I think I mentioned last week, the Buddha summarised the essence of what he's teaching. And it was, I'll read it just so I get it exactly right. Abandon even the slightest negativity. So imagine that the Buddha is actually talking to you. So if anybody ever asks, what's the Buddha talk about? What has the Buddha taught? Then at least you'll know what the very essence is. Abandon even the slightest negativity. Thoroughly engage in virtue and subdue your mind. These are the teachings of the Muni, of the Muni, which is just another word for the Buddha. So I find that really very helpful to recall that these are the most important things, the essence of what the Buddha taught. Abandoning negativity, not harming others, and cultivating virtue, trying to be of benefit to others as much as possible. And subduing the mind. Well, whatever is in our mind, whatever motivation we have in our mind, is pretty well going to determine what the actions are of our body and speech. So if we've restrained our mind with virtuous thoughts, kind thoughts, then you can be pretty sure you're not going to go out and hit somebody, you're not going to go out and cause harm to somebody, because you've subdued your mind. So it's very important. I just wanted to classify Buddhism a little bit, to put it into its bigger perspective. Because the Buddha taught, it said, 84,000 bundles of teachings. He taught for 40 years, and he taught a great many different people with different levels of intelligence, people with different levels of interest, and so he taught according to their abilities and what was relevant to them and what they could actually apply. So, looking at the Buddha's raw teachings, it's quite hard. I haven't done this, I've heard that, but these texts that are here on the left and the right are the collections of all the Buddha's teachings. It's hard to know where to start. It's hard to know, because there might appear to be contradiction. The Buddha said this to this person, whereas it said that to that person. So what happened was in the 11th century, a great master called Atisha brought all of the Buddha's teachings together and was able to summarise them all into one concise, easy to follow explanation of the Buddhist practice. And that's called the Lam Rim, which it means the graduated path to enlightenment. So I've always brought this book with me every week, and this book is by Pabonka Rinpoche, and it was written in 1921, and he gave teachings in Tibet over 21 days, I think it was, and where he taught the Lam Rim. And this particular text is often recommended and often taught by the Tibetan Lamas when they're teaching Buddhism. Geshe Doga, who's the resident teacher here at Tara Institute, actually taught every section of this text over nearly 10 years. I think it... I think from 1994 to like 2002. And that was just, incredible. So what is in the Lam Rim? So the Lam Rim sets it out very clearly to us on what to practice and how to practice. So the Lam Rim is broken up into three main areas or three sections called the three scopes. And this helps us understand what the goals are within Buddhism. There is the small scope, the middle scope, and the great scope. I'll try not to be confusing here because there's lots to say and I get my words mixed up sometimes. So within the small scope, in the small scope stages of the path, the main contemplations, the main things that we're meditating on to try to understand are death and impermanence, are the three lower realms. I'll just talk about things a little bit without delving into too much detail, we'll run out of time. About the three objects of refuge, the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, and how we can rely on the three objects of refuge to free us from fears of where we might be reborn in our next life. It's possible to be reborn in the lower realms as an animal, it's certainly taught, or other realms. And then, of course, there's karma. So those four topics are the main topics that are covered under the small scope stages of the path. And what sort of practices do you do on the small scope stages of the path? Well, this is where it's really important to practice morality, to practice avoiding the 10 non-virtuous actions and trying to practice the 10 virtuous actions. If we can do that, then, and we take refuge, if we follow the instruction of the Buddha himself can't actually take away our suffering or give us his realizations, but through following his teachings, we are able to create the causes that in our next life we will be reborn in a human realm again. Because if we're not careful of our actions, it's very easy for us to be reborn in the lower realms. All sounds a bit strange about hearing that, but this is the reality that's taught in Buddhism. And I gave you an example last week of how rare it is to be born with a precious human rebirth. The analogy was of a turtle that comes to the surface of the ocean only once every 100 years. And on that surface of the ocean, the wind's blowing, the waves are moving, and there's a small little yolk or little ring floating around in the vast ocean. Turtle only comes up once every 100 years, and for it to come up to the surface is analogous of obtaining a human rebirth, whereas the permanent address of that turtle in that example is in the lower realms. So what that's really trying to show us is that to have obtained a human rebirth, as we have, we shouldn't take it for granted, because in the bigger scheme of things, it's hard to obtain a human rebirth. So the small scope is all about practicing the 10 virtues, avoiding the 10 non-virtues. Why? To ensure that at least in our next life, which is coming, we will have a human rebirth. We won't be reborn in the lower realms. I don't know if that's foreign to a lot of people hearing about that. I'm sorry if it is, but I'll just keep going, and we can ask some questions soon. The middle scope stages of the path are where we mainly contemplate the suffering nature of every realm of existence within samsara. So, of course, we can see the disadvantages of being reborn in an animal rebirth, and we can see on TV David Attenborough shows. We can see the animals chasing each other and eating each other alive, and you wouldn't want to be reborn in an animal realm. There's much suffering in that animal realm. Of course, Buddhism describes a hell realm as well, and also another one called the preta realm, which is where there's these beings suffer great hunger and thirst for incredible lengths of time. But we can't see these realms, so it's a bit hard to relate to, but it is taught and explained. So in the middle scope, it's seeing that not only would we not want to be reborn in the lower realms, but even within the human realm, and there are realms beyond the human realm that are even more, characterised with pleasure, more pleasure. Godly realms where there's just sensual pleasure. So even if we were to be reborn in the upper realms, still the underlying nature of any of those realms is the nature of suffering. Because even being reborn in these godly realms, eventually they come to an end. And it's usually described that the vast merit that they've accumulated in their life that has resulted in their being reborn in a godly realm eventually exhausts. And there's no option but for them to fall down into the lower realms again. So the cycle of birth and death throughout these 6 realms of existence continues regardless. So the middle scope recognises that it doesn't matter where you are born in cyclic existence or samsara, its underlying nature is unsatisfactory and in the nature of suffering. So this leads us to practice and to understand the 4 noble truths. We need to understand what is the cause of that suffering, and we need to know what is the path that leads you out of that suffering, and then the actual experience of the cessation of that suffering. So it's said that the middle scope mainly focuses on the 4 noble truths and something else called the 12 links of interdependent origination. And these just describe the 12 steps that cause us to remain in cyclic existence. I won't list them. So the goal of the middle scope is to achieve liberation, which is a word, or nirvana, which is a word that we commonly hear. So the middle scope is about achieving nirvana, which is being liberated from the wheel of cyclic existence. So you are no longer subject to birth and death. You are no longer forced to be reborn in these various realms of existence. You have abandoned the very root that causes that, the root ignorance that causes, I should say, because what causes us to be reborn in samsara is karma and delusion. Delusions are rooted in ignorance. From ignorance arises attachment, arises anger, arises jealousy, arises pride, competitiveness. All of these, what we call delusions or emotional afflictions, all arise from this deep-seated ignorance. And motivated by those, we engage in actions of body and speech. And these are the actions that plant seeds on our consciousness that ripen in a future life where we experience life in any of these various realms. So the middle scope goal is to achieve nirvana, to achieve liberation from that. The great scope is actually the ultimate intention of what the Buddha was teaching. Because, you know, in the middle scope, we have recognised the depth of the underlying suffering nature within cyclic existence that we are ourselves caught in. And there's a yearning to be liberated from that. One generates renunciation, the wish to be liberated from that. But, you know, that's just one person. And with this great scope, it recognises that all sentient beings, all living beings, are caught within this same situation. So, motivated out of love and compassion, the great scope practitioner, which becomes a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is somebody who has generated or taken on that responsibility that not only do I want to be free from cyclic existence myself, I want to liberate all sentient beings. And in order to do that, how can I do that? I can only do that by myself achieving complete enlightenment, because only the Buddha has the infinite compassion, the infinite wisdom and the skillful means to know how to best lead individual sentient beings based on their capability and their potential and their capacities. So the great scope goal is to achieve full enlightenment. The contemplation of the great scope being is recognising that just as we are caught, so are all other sentient beings. And the main practice of the great scope is what's called the six perfections. And that's the heart of the great scope practice. So the practice of generosity and morality, patience, enthusiasm, concentration and wisdom. These are the six main practices of the great scope. So in Tibetan Buddhism, within Buddhism there's two main vehicles. There's the Hinayana vehicle and the Mahayana vehicle. The Hinayana vehicle is called the lesser vehicle, and the Mahayana is called the great vehicle, or the greater vehicle. They're separated because of the how expansive they are. The Hinayana vehicle is about wanting to achieve individual liberation for myself alone. I want to achieve eternal inner peace, free from all suffering. Whereas the Mahayana vehicle recognises that just as oneself is in this situation, so are all other sentient beings. So it's greater in the expanse of what the Mahayana vehicle wants to achieve. So Tibetan Buddhism follows the Mahayana tradition. Its goal is to achieve highest enlightenment, ultimately, and the very heart of Tibetan Buddhism is the development of love and compassion, and combined with the development of this wisdom that I was describing. So when I talk about the Lam Rim, and we say that there's the small scope, the middle scope, and the great scope, the small scope, the small scope and the middle scope are foundations for being able to practice the great scope. If one's ultimate goal is to achieve the goal of the middle scope, which is to achieve one's own individual liberation, then one is following the Hinayana vehicle. If one's goal is to achieve the state of highest enlightenment in order to be of greatest benefit to all sentient beings and to lead all sentient beings to enlightenment, then one is following the great scope and is following the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism. Sorry, so much dogma. But I just wanted to say it. This is the path from the small, middle and great scope. Any questions? Because I want to save the last 10 minutes for doing a meditation. Anybody want to challenge or want to say, that doesn't make sense, or who proved that?
I don't see why the Buddha didn't hang around and keep converting people personally. Make sure got enlightened. If it's for the sake of all sentient beings, stick around.
Well, look, that's a very good question, because it makes me think straight away about the qualities of the Buddha. Because achieving the state of enlightenment or the state of omniscience, is a big thing. It's our own inner ultimate potential. And when the Buddha is enlightened, he achieves the form body and the truth body. And the form body can manifest unhindered to as many sentient beings as is needed. So it's often said that the spiritual guru that comes and sits and teaches us is a manifestation of the Buddha. So to say that the Buddha has achieved enlightenment and gone off isn't actually correct. The Buddha has achieved a state that has removed any restriction for him to be able to appear in whatever aspect, in whatever form is needed to tame sentient beings. So a Buddha can appear as I don't know, I'm just making up something now, but to tame a certain being, it could appear as somebody that's extremely angry and somebody really difficult to get along with. Maybe this is a Buddha appearing in order to help that person develop patience. So whatever, the Buddha has no obstacle or restriction. I don't know if that answers that. So, any other tricky questions?
Denis, I've got one about the animal realm, and I understand what you're saying about the suffering and animals are sort of fighting each other for survival.
Yeah.
That's their focus, and that makes logical sense to
Yeah.
me. But the confusing part for me is I have a greyhound, best dogs in the world, and my dog has qualities that manifest naturally that I have to work really hard for. My dog manifests forgiveness, love, no jealousy, no bitterness, no resentment.
Yeah.
This comes naturally to this is the grunt stuff I
Yeah.
have to work on. My dog just step on her tail, forgives you in a microsecond.
Yeah.
I need months to forgive someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
I can relate to that too. I've got 3 dogs, and Cyril, a male dog, so affectionate, loves the ball, playing with the ball, and doesn't growl or anything like that. But the thing is, forget about animals that eat each other. An animal has limited capacity. You can't teach an animal to meditate. And you can't teach an animal the importance of, practicing virtual and abandoning non-virtual. I can't stop him from chasing birds. He doesn't like birds. There's no doubt about that. But it's more about the classic or the main suffering of the animal realm is ignorance. Their brain, they have a different brain than we do. It's limited in its capacity of being able to think. It doesn't have the ability to analyse, to read, to understand. Of course, it does have affection, but, you know, I think that's what the point is. An animal rebirth is extremely limited. And, you know, I keep seeing this on the footpath as I leave my home. Worms that are lying there, still wriggling, totally being attacked by ants. I mean, what a life. What a horrible way to die. I mean, you know, we're going from a dog to a worm, but we're talking about a being in the animal realm. And you've only got to start to divert and start and look into the insect world. And, you know, it's horrific, the sort of life that they've got. And, yeah. So, and then, so you can say that the main suffering of the animal realm is ignorance, and if you don't feed your dog, where's he going to get his food? You know, your dog's a very fortunate dog. So this again comes back to karma. We always say about our own dog that it's in the dog pure realm, because everything comes to it. We feed it, we take it to the vet, it's got a nice bed, we look after it. But it hasn't, it's throwing karma, because karma is a big thing. Throwing karma throws you into your next rebirth. So unfortunately, our dog had unfortunate throwing karma to be born as an animal. So he must have done something to create the cause for that. What did he do? I don't know. You know, the Buddha would know. The Buddha has unobstructed vision and understands exactly what causes resulted in what effect. But whatever he did, it was non-virtuous. But at the same time, the result of generosity is, you know, wealth or abundance of things. So he practiced generosity. There's no doubt about that. And you look at the racehorses, you know, they win millions of dollars, but they can't spend any of it. But they've been reborn in the lower realm. They've, you know. So there's a mixture of things. I didn't explain that very well, but yeah. So maybe time for one more question, and we'll do a quick meditation. So, you know, I talked a lot about the Buddha meditation, and last week I didn't want to clutter by saying too many things, but I have quickly just gone over the three scopes, the small, the middle and the great scope. What's wrong with the human realm? You know, what are the sufferings of the human realm? And that's what I was going to talk about last week, and I ran out of time. But just to list them, there are 8 sufferings that are described as common to all human beings. The suffering of birth, the suffering of sickness, the suffering of old age, the suffering of death, the suffering of not meeting with who we want to meet with or what we want to meet with, the suffering of meeting with those that we don't want to meet with. And then there's the suffering of just not getting what we want. We strive to get things and we don't get them. And the last is the suffering of being bound, it's called, to these aggregates. And the aggregates are something you'll hear about in Buddhism, about the 5 aggregates. And basically it's a combination of body and mind make up what are called the 5 aggregates. Form, feeling, recognition, compositional factors and consciousness. So that's basically what a person is, made up of body and 4 aggregates that make up mind. And so being bound to these aggregates is another one of the human sufferings. I was thinking about this, and I was fortunate enough to be in India when the Dalai Lama was giving some teachings many years ago. And it always stood in my mind, this is 30 years ago, that he said this body is a receiver of pain. And, you know, like when you think of a radio receiver, it receives a signal or whatever, it's quite true. This human body potentially can suffer so much. There's the potential for pain. We're not now. We're quite comfortable. Got lots of nice food to eat. We're warm. But take away things and, you know, there's great potential suffering just from this form. So they are the 8 general sufferings of the human realm. And they're what need to be contemplated in the middle scope, because there are issues. There are issues with the human existence. Nobody likes to get sick, but we get sick. Old age takes away our freedom, takes away our energy. You know, I remember my dad who used to wheel me around in the backyard in a wheelbarrow. You know, there was one point then when he got old where he couldn't get off the ground in the backyard. He couldn't lift his own body to get up. And that comes with old age. And then, of course, there's death. It's a reality we don't want to face. It's good that we can talk about it and think about it, because then we can actually think about how we live each day properly. Are we properly living each day to the best of our ability? Otherwise, don't think about it. Okay, just go along, and you know, maybe there'll be regret at the end. And you know, yeah. All right, so I've covered an awful lot. I didn't mean to be so verbal, but any other questions? Otherwise, we'll go into a meditation. All right, so let's just spend the next 5 or 6 minutes doing a meditation. And I thought it was, you know, as I mentioned to you, the essence of the Mahayana vehicle, or the great scope, is love and compassion. And we've been the recipient of great kindness from our mother. So I wanted to just do an analytical meditation, remembering the kindness of our mother. So let's just bring to mind your mother, your dear mother, alive or departed. She carried you in her womb. As soon as she knew you were conceived, her focus was all on you. What she ate, whatever activities, conversations with others, all thoughts were about you and making sure the pregnancy would be without issue. Her love was already there before you were born. And then you were born. You were her only concern, to make sure you were warm, you were fed, you were clean. Her every thought was about your welfare. Without her total dedication to you, you wouldn't survive. And as we grew, she would feed you, clothe you, comfort you. You were loved. Even if she was unwell, you were still her main concern. Even as an adult, we might have said something that upset or hurt her feelings, but it didn't stop her love for you. So this leads us to feel greatly appreciative of our mother and to want to repay her kindness. To want to ensure that she is happy. And free of any issues. Free of any discomfort. Filled with joy. So we can even visualise from our heart light pouring out, filling her with our love. Filling her with great peace. May she never be separated from happiness. And never experience suffering. So just to conclude tonight, so in Buddhism it's very important that if we've engaged in any virtuous activity or, through that we accumulate some positive potential. So whatever positive potential we may have gained or accumulated through tonight's discussion and our positive attitude, let's dedicate it to the ultimate wishes of our mothers. That they are always secure and happy wherever they are. They meet with the Buddha's teachings, that they may be guided by spiritual teachers that lead them to their own ultimate attainment of enlightenment. All right. Thank you, everyone. Please stay for a cup of tea if you've got time. And see you next time. So this is my last night. So I've got lots I'd like to say, but just run out of time. So have a good Christmas and see you all later. Sorry? This one is called Liberation in the Palm of the Hand, Palm of Your Hand, by Pabonka Rinpoche. Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand.